Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, wa kafa, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد صدق الله رسوله الرؤيا بالحق لتدخلن المسجد الحرام إن شاء الله آمنين محلقين رؤوسكم ومقصرين لا تخافون فعلم ما لم تعلموا فجعل من دون ذلك فتحا قريبا هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما صدق الله العظيم. Alhamdulillah, all praise for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious and most merciful. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the divine guidance and to be here. Alhamdulillah, we're finishing Surah Fath today, the last three verses of Surah Fath. These three verses, they're about the dream of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he was going to Umrah. Right, that trip to Surah Hudaybiyah, it took place because of a dream. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had this dream, and prophets' dreams are true, so therefore they embarked on this journey. And then on their return back, once they realized they ended up with this treaty with bad terms, they were sad on their return back. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this surah and gave glad tidings that you will have Fathul Mubin, you'll have a great victory. Also, the Munafiqeen, they would taunt the Muslims that, oh, you guys were supposed to be going for Umrah, and now look, you guys are back, and you're back with these bad terms as well. So this first verse here, it begins with that. It translates, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam are true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has confirmed true for His messenger the dream. Allah has confirmed true for His messenger the dream with truth. Meaning that it's a true dream. And this is like being revealed now they're back. They had a dream. They went on a journey. There was no Umrah. And then they're coming back. And now they're reading these verses, right? So the Prophet has revealed that verily His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's dream is true. لَتَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامِ. You all will enter Masjid al-Haram, inshaAllah, aminin, in security. مُحَلِّقِينَ رُؤُوسَكُمْ وَمُقَصِّرِينَ. And some of you are going to shave your head, and some of you will trim your hair. Because in the dream, all these things were shown. Prophet was shown that he went to Umrah, he did the Umrah, he did the Sa'i, they cut the hair. He saw this much details. That's why he had embarked on that journey. لا تخافون, you'd fear no one. فعلم ما تعلمون, he knows what you do not know, and then he will make beyond this, he will make after this a victory for you. So the Umrah mentioned here is the Umrah that happened the year after. Basically 1 year after, because it's part of the peace treaty that they could be allowed to do Umrah. So that was the Umrah that took place. So this dream was a reference to that. So the Prophet ﷺ having a shubha, the fact that Prophet ﷺ thought that it was this trip, there's no issue with that. There's no academic problem with that. That's that. Him doubting when Allah is telling him that you're going to go on this trip or go on this trip, it could be whichever trip. It could have been the trip afterwards, right? The shubha, he thought it was this one. That was just a shubha. There's no problem with that. The dream is still true, but he had a little issue. Which time do I go? Another example of this is when Prophet ﷺ, when he did hijrah to Madinah Munawwara, he was shown a dream that he's going to go to Madinah Munawwara, and a place was shown. And so in the description was given that it's a rocky place and it has dates and whatever the description was given out. In Arabia, there's a lot of places that look similar. So Prophet ﷺ thought that maybe Medina was a place in Yemen. So that doesn't mean that his dream was untrue. His dream was true, that you're going to go to this land with these descriptions. But his doubt was in which one. You see, many places look alike. So similarly here, he thought it was this year, but it was the year after. So the dream is still true. He's doubting in which one is it. He thought it was that time. It was wrong. He came back. And remember, the Surah Hudaybiyah is all victory anyway. Right? It's part of Allah's plan. Also, when Allah says his dream came true, or when the Prophet sees a dream, okay, there's no dates involved with it. He didn't see a date that it was this year that you're going to go, not next year, right? So the dream is true. There was a shubha in his understanding of when he's supposed to go. Another question that arises here is when it says, Insha'Allah. So in the dream it says, you will enter Masjid al-Haram, Insha'Allah, Ameen. Why does it say Insha'Allah? Insha'Allah is for future events. Like Allah says in the Quran, don't say you'll do something tomorrow, except that you say Insha'Allah. So why does it say Insha'Allah? We know this is going to happen. This was a dream. This is going to happen. So why is it Insha'Allah if Allah will? So we understand that Insha'Allah is not only about future events that are going to happen, it's also for future events you say out of barakah. In the Sharia, we have references of Insha'Allah. You don't just say Insha'Allah if Allah wants, if you're not sure about something. You can also say it about things that you are sure about it. That I'm coming tomorrow, Insha'Allah. Right? So that you can use it barakah. The proof of this, the dua of when you go to the graveyard. When you go to the graveyard, there's one dua, you'll see it there. Insha'Allah bikum lahiqun. Like, all people of the grave, you all have passed us, we're right before you, and we're headed in the same way to the dua with this wording. You've gone ahead of us, we are coming behind you. Wa inna insha'Allah bikum lahiqun. Insha'Allah, we're going to meet with you. So what do you mean? Are you having a doubt that you're going to meet with them? If Allah wills, we'll meet with you. Is there a doubt that you're going to meet with the people in the grave? There's no doubts at all. You're going there for sure. You're going to catch up to the people in the graves. So why is the Insha'Allah there? Insha'Allah there is barakah. So we learn from this that you can sometimes use the word Insha'Allah as just blessings. Then it mentions muhalliqeen ru'usakum wa muqassirin. Some will shave their heads and some will trim. This act in Hajj and in Umrah, this is wajib. You can't come out of the state of Ihram without this. There is no alternative. And it's wajib. What if someone just started cutting his hair, or he came out, just took off his ihram without doing the trimming or the shaving? Then he'll owe a penalty. He'll owe the dam. He'll have to do a sacrifice of an animal. Also, it's preferable that a non-muhrim does your haircut. It's preferable that a non-muhrim does your haircut. But again, if they're not available, you can even do your own. But when you do your own, you have to make intention that it's true. You're doing the halaq to get out of the state of ihram. If you just start cutting your hair, then you owe penalty again because you are cutting hair. So if it's with the niyyah, also if there's no one available and you're not going to cut your hair by yourself, and you're not going to have another muhrim in a person. You can have a regular person cut your hair, and you can have another muhrim cut your hair. So another person in state of ihram. You can do that if you don't have the other person available. So this is the only way to come out of ihram. There's no other way. Sometimes, people, they go do Hajj and then they do Umrah right after, and your hair is already shaven. Sometimes they have a question, or I just shaved my hair, I don't have any hair, what do I cut? They still have to run the blade just over, might just catch something. Or you just have to run the blade over. And that will suffice.
Trim it first and trim it again.
Yeah, you can trim it first, trim it again. The more preferable between the two is shaving. So it says, La takhafun, you're not going to fear when you finally go in. And this Umrah they did the next year after. And remember, when they went the next year after, they were much more richer because they had the spoils from the Khaybar. They had already won, it took all the spoils of Khaybar. So they went in a much more, they got through the spiritual trip, plus they were materially very much more well off. فَعَلِمَ مَا تَعْلَمُ, he knows what you do not know. فَجَعَلَ مِن دُونِ ذَلِكَ فَتْحًا قَرِيبًا. So he knew what you did not know, and he assigned before that a victory near at hand. So this over here, this reference, he has assigned for you a victory near at hand. These are references to conquest of Makkah. They're getting little glad tidings that we have some big thing awaiting for you. Can you imagine that? Where they're persecuted from, they go and start a new community, and now they're going to go back as a victor. The next verse, وَالَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى. Right, this usually imams, they read the last rukus, if you notice. We might have heard this ruku, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ. But usually the last ruku is like the highlight of all the whole surah. It's like even in essays, right? As humans, we are the conclusionary remarks. So usually if you look at different imams, you notice they read the last, Surah Baqarah last, Surah Al-Imran last. Those are the most powerful of the verses. The imams usually select them. Just FYI. Also, it's a good practice. You all can try to maybe memorize the last verses. وَالَّذِي أَرْسَلَ, he is the one who sent his messenger with guidance. وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ, and religion of truth. لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, so that it can dominate over all other religions or ways of lives. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough as a witness for this fact. So what's the connection between the previous verse and this verse? There's a connection. The previous one was specific victory, and this one is general victory. Meaning that was like, if you look at the seerah of Rasulullah, Fateh Makkah was like the highlight, the conquest of Makkah. And then the next verse is conquest of, is the general, the whole planet's conquest. Meaning that this deen of Islam is from Allah, it's the ultimate truth, and it has to dominate over everything. Yeah, sure. So it's going from specific victory to general victory. So also we learn from this verse that Islam is for domination. That's the purpose. Because truth has to dominate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created truth and He needs it to dominate. How can truth be dominated by not truth? It can't function that way. Also remember, when it says dominate, does it mean that it needs to, all the other religions have to come to an end? No, it doesn't need to eliminate all the other religions. They can exist, but dominate, meaning that it needs to have no one can put it down. Others can be put into their places, but it has to always have the upper hand. Even in, like, for example, in jihad, in Islamic warfare, the purpose is not to eliminate the enemy. It's just dominate. Just dominate. Make sure that there's no hindrance. Don't get in our way. Of truth's way, of justice way. No one can get in the way of that. Understand? You could do your own religion, do your freedom of religion, you could do your own thing. But no one should get in the way of Islam. It's the way Allah wants it. That's why when you, in a war situation, when the Muslim army goes, what are the three things they ask? They present that you accept Islam, or you become our brothers. And the second one is that you pay jizya, you pay taxes. And the third option, then we're going to have a war. So it doesn't want anybody in its way. It deserves, because the truth, it deserves this domination. In regards to taxes, even the way the Muslims handle taxes in a Muslim country, set-up country, Muslims weren't taxed. In a Muslim country, Muslim countries would run off the taxes they would get off of other states, and the state was run off of that. And even the state had very less expenses. I mean, nowadays our expenditure is out of the roof, everyone's expenditure and countries' expenditures. But at that time, it was very, very minimal that a Muslim country could just run off of the other countries' jizya that they're paying. And when they pay jizya, it's not just for free, for your protection. It's a give and take. And that was always Islam's rule. So it's not just free money. Nothing is free. It's for their protection. So we have a story by Omar radiallahu ta'ala, that one of his, the people he used to appoint, Amirs, he had his army protecting the people because they took taxes from them. And then they needed this army at the border somewhere else. So he wrote a letter to Umar radiallahu ta'ala that I need to move this army from their protection and move to the border. Is that fine? Which is like, is that fine? He said that's fine. Just return their taxes. Let them know that we're not going to protect you anymore for this year. And good, move the army. So it was like to that T. And these are the teachings of Islam, honesty, truthfulness, that really impressed on people, and people accepted Islam. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to have this kind of clarity. Because look, even in warfare, like the rules of Islam warfare, is that observed in today's warfare? Yeah, so when Islam talks about warfare and jihad, if the rules are not observed, right, if the innocent are dying more, right, innocents are not even supposed to be touched. Like when we talked about the three things that Islam is going to ask and to have a war, it's not only have war just with the combatants. It's not going to have war with the women, children. They're not the priest, who's anybody in the worship places. They're all protected. It's just the combatants. So if that's not happening, if it's not the combatant, if it's the innocent, that is zulm. It's not jihad anymore. It turns from jihad to zulm. So these things are noted. Then, furthermore, on the domination of Islam, what happened after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, the Arabs were all what we know today as Saudi Arabia. That's the Arabia. That's the only thing. Today we know many different Arab countries beyond Saudi Arabia. But that time, that was it. The Arabian, that Rasulullah sallallahu in his time, that had become Fath before the Prophet passed away, was just Saudi Arabia. Then the empires, I'm just giving you the whole this quick rundown of what happened. The two superpowers, one was Faris and one was Rum. The Rum was the Europeans, and Faris is the Persians. Their capital was in Iran, and the Romans' capital was Istanbul. Yeah. Then all the countries that are neighboring Saudi Arabia, it's either with the two empires. They were like unimaginable they could take these two empires. Arabia, nobody wants Arabia. These two empires did not want. They didn't see nothing in Arabia worth taking. They left it to the tribes to just fight themselves. So there was a tribal system that fight. So Prophet before he passed, so that Saudi Arabia was the Fath of it happened. Then in Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala's time, there were some skirmish, there's some internal fighting within the Arabia. Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala handled it in the sense that it became very peaceful. Just Saudi Arabia. Then came the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala, and in the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala, both of these two fell. These two empires fell. And the motive of Umar radiallahu ta'ala, let's eliminate zulm. They didn't ask Umar radiallahu ta'ala anything. But he realized that there were people being taxed. He saw zulm from Islamic side of justice. So he's like, that's not going to happen on his watch. So he just took down both within the period of 40 years. So within the period of 40 years, these two empires, they fell. Then the golden era of Islam, it lasted 600 years. 600 years of golden era of Islam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in this ayah. Then the next verse, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Muhammadur Rasulullah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. This verse, so Muhammadur Rasulullah. You remember in Surah Hudaybiyah when the treaty was signed? Remember Prophet ﷺ was asked, someone wrote Muhammadur Rasulullah and they had asked, can you please delete just that part? And Prophet ﷺ was like, give me the eraser, and he erased it. So therefore Allah SWT mentioned, no, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. That's why Mufassirin say this is here. Then Muhammadur Rasulullah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ, and then it gives the awsaf of the Jama'at of the Sahaba. Meaning that this conquest of the world is going to take place is because he is surrounded by such a group. So the characteristics of that group are highlighted, that the Jamaat of Sahaba or any group that has these characteristics will succeed are mentioned. The first one, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ, those who are with him. That's the first characteristic of Sahaba. So the Sahaba are with him in good times and bad times. That's the hallmark, proper loyalty. I said, well, munafiqs are with them in what? Good times or hard times? And good times. That's a hallmark of a munafiq, that he's with the group in and just in good times. Let me know when the good times come, then I'm right with you. In the hard times, I'm not with you. So Allah SWT give us these awsaf of Sahaba. So good times, bad times, they were always with Rasul. They were with Rasulullah. Next quality, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ, hard with the kuffar. They were rough with the kuffar. They were hard on the kuffar, no compromise. Then number 3, رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم, love between each other. Love between each other. They had very deep love between each other. Now, also you can derive from this that, sometimes when we read history, we find out that Sahaba had war between them, or they had a difference between them. But it says رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم, they had a lot of mercy between each other. So on the one hand, we see history where they've had a war, and then Sahaba, but it says they had mercy. So you have nusus, the holy text on one side, and you have history on the other side. So the Muslim way of thinking is that we always take the text over the history. And also, they were so great. Their war was for good reason. Mine and your agreements are not that holy as much as, right? The big people's difference is so holy. Mine and your agreement, we're not getting that much reward as opposed to their arguments. Right? That's how elders are, right? People who are superior, who have rank. That their argument must have been for such a holy reason. They're getting so much reward for it that our agreements are we're not getting that much reward. So Sahaba, mentions about them. Ruhama'u bainahum. They were merciful between each other. Their next characteristic, you guys are counting? A, B, C, right? وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ was 1A, right? 1, 2. أَشِدَّاءُ الْكُفَّارِ, next characteristic, رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم, and then تَرَاهُمْ رُكَّعًا سُجَّدًا. You see them doing prostration and sajda. They were very steadfast in their salah. Very steadfast in their salah. With salah, you get your connection with Allah. Their salah was very proper. You get your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So their connection was very strong. Also, one more thing to know, whenever you look in the Quran, whenever Allah says establish salah, He also says give zakat. You don't see establish salah and do hajj. You don't see that combination there. You normally always see aqimu salah, then ba'atu zakat. The wisdom behind that is when you give zakat, your connection with human beings is better. It's the hikmah behind it. If the zakat is allocated properly, your connection with people becomes better. And the other one is if your salah is proper, your connection with the Creator becomes proper. So they had that. The Jamaat al-Sahaba. Their Khalid. Then next characteristic, يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرِضْوَانًا. They used to seek the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His pleasure. They used to seek the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His grace. After that, سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ. There were traces in their faces, there were signs in their faces, the mark of sujood. Meaning of their piety, of their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was seen on their faces. Now, this is not that one. I know some people, they rub their, it doesn't mean that you have to make a superficial mark, or there has to be a mark, or sometimes people get a mark because their skin over here is very thin. It doesn't mean that physical mark. It means it's a spiritual. Right? Some people have they have a skin thing here, so when they stick around, then it leaves a mark. Some people do sajdas all their life, but they never get a mark because their skin. It's not that one. And then sometimes people try to rub it just to get that, based off this verse, but that's the wrong understanding of this verse. Okay, it's more of it's a new spiritual mark. Some say that these verses that we just read, that they, and you can apply them generally to all the Sahaba. Some say, no, this is just the four Khulafa that we just talked about. So when it says, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ, this is Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, who was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in every occasion. I mean, every Sahaba was, but who was more with him? Who had the Ma'iyah is Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala. Then Ashidda'u al-Kuffar, who was hard on the Kuffar? Omar radiallahu ta'ala. And then Ruhama'u baynahum, who was that gentle, kind, hearted person? Usman radiallahu ta'ala. And then Tarahum Ruk'an Sujjadan, who was the one who was known for his salah? That was Ali. We have reference that Ali radiallahu ta'ala with his salah. He was very much famous. So some say these are just the four khulafa. Some say no, these are all scattered. Some say those are four, and then يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَرِضْوَانًا is the rest. ذَلِكَ مَثَلُهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ. So this group with all these great qualities, right? They had these superior qualities. And remember, the Sahaba are also selected, just like Anbiya are selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ, the people who were with Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they were not just at random. They were not some random people. They were selected to have the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it says, ذَلِكَ مَثَلُهُمْ, that's their example in the Torah, and that's their example in the Injil. Meaning that this description that we've just laid out of the Sahaba, you find this example in the Torah, and you find this example in the Injil. So I have, what time is Salat? 37? Okay. So we have here in the footnotes, this is the translation of Tafseer Uthmani Sahab, Rahmat Barakatuhum. So in here, he put two references from the Bible. So I'm just going to read them to you, okay? The references from the Bible where it mentions about Sahaba. So it says, despite many distortions, the following prophecy is still available in the existing Torah. Okay, so this is the quote. So I quote, the Lord came from Sinai. Okay, this is the lecture of Musa alayhi salam. The Lord came from Sinai. He's talking about his Torah. And downed from Sa'ir upon us. Downed from Sa'ir, I think there's a reference to Injil. He shone from Mount Paran. That's a reference to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So like Musa alayhi salam has said that it's going to come from here, Injil will come from here, and that Mount of Paran, that's Makkah. He came from the 10,000s of holy ones with flaming fire at his right hand. The 10,000 holy ones, in reference to the Sahaba, with flaming fire at his right hand. Yeah, he loved his people. All those consecrated to him were in his right hand, so they followed in thy step, receiving directions from thee. Deuteronomy 33:2-3. Now the explanation of that is written here. This is the last sermon of Musa alayhi salam, in which he had pointed out that Allah's revelation had come firstly from Mount Sinai. That is the Torah. Secondly, it will come from Mount Sa'ir, that is the Injil, as Mount Sa'ir is the mount called today Jabal al-Khalil, which was one of the centers of preachings for Isa alayhi salam. And thirdly, it will shine from Mount Paran, which is a mount near Makkah. This clearly alludes to the Holy Prophet Muhammad as he received his first revelation in the cave of Mount Paran. He received his first revelation in the Mount Paran. It should be noted that the number of companions of the Holy Prophet was 10,000 at the time of the conquest of Makkah. And thus he came from the 10,000 of holy ones. Thus he came from the 10,000 of holy ones. The Holy Quran says that his companions are hard on disbelievers, while the Torah says with flaming fire in the right hand. So that reference with flaming fire in the right hand is a reference to hard on the kuffar. Furthermore, the Torah says, yeah, he loved his people, and the Quran says compassion among themselves. Thus, it is not far-fetched possibility that the Holy Quran is referring to this prophecy. And then another quote here, the Gospel of Mark still has the following statement of Isa alayhi salam. The kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed upon the ground and should sleep and rise night and day, and the seed should sprout and grow. He knows not how. The earth produce of itself, first a blade, then the ear, then the full of grain in the ear. But when the grain is ripe, at once he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come. Same proverb is also available in Luke, Matthew as well. This example here, the sickle, because they're about, but even the Sahaba are mentioned, we're about to get an example, yu'jibu zurra'a, about the farm. Same example about the Sahaba that Quran gives, same one is the one that, you just read that, right? Like a harvest, sickle grows. We're about to read that one just now. So see that reference there? That if this example is in the Torah and this example is in Injil, and if you match it with these two, looks like it's the same prophecy. Kazara'in. Okay, so now Allah Ta'ala wants to give us a parable, an example of Sahaba. What's an example of Sahaba? Let me just tell you my own words, okay? And then maybe we'll read these verses and they'll sink better. The example of Sahaba, they say it's like a plant, something that grows, like a seed that's planted, and then it grows, and then it becomes very strong, and then a farmer looks at it and goes, how did that seed become so big and so ripe and so strong? You know, you become amazed at the miraculous creation of it. That's the example of Sahaba. Meaning that when people first saw them, they saw them very weak. You know, when the plant first comes out, like, oh, Prophet ﷺ is surrounded by what kind of people? Then they're not going to do anything. They can't come that strong. But they grow, and it becomes so strong. And now you're like, and then it says after that, لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ, that the kuffar will look at them and get angry. Like they become raged. Like this plant grew that strong. Because like the people who we saw, right, when they first started off, we saw they were so weak. He was surrounded by the poor, or by the weak, or by the few. But at the end, it became like that. So that's, again, so we learn from that, that's the nature of truth. That it comes up small, people look at it, this is 2 people, 3 people, nothing's going to happen here. But if it's the truth, that's going to grow just like the Sahaba. It'll grow strong, and then people who are envious, they're gonna die in their envy and their hate. That, oh, how did this get so strong? There's the truth. Truth has to, it's going to get planted in. So I think this is the superb example given here. So it says, كَزَرْعٍ أَخْرَجَ شَطْأَهُ فَآزَرَهُ فَاسْتَغْلَظَ فَاسْتَوَى عَلَى سُوقِهِ يُعْجِبُ الزُّرَّاعَ لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ. Like a sown crop that brings forth its shoot, that makes it strong, then it grows thick and stands straight on its stem, looking good to the farmers. And then it says, so that he may enrage the disbelievers through them. So that he may enrage disbelievers through them. But Al-Kufar, when they, I mean, can you imagine after the conquest of Makkah, when they must have turned around and said, this community became that strong that they're about to dominate the whole planet. We thought, you know, they were nothing. And then also Imam Malik, based on this verse, he takes out a masala from this. He says, you know, it says, لِيَغِيظَ بِهِمُ الْكُفَّارِ, the kuffar will get angry at them. Imam Malik says that anybody who gets angry at the Sahaba, it says kuffar get angry at them. It says kuffar get angry at the Sahaba. So anybody who has anger towards Sahaba, right? What do we say in our khutbahs? مَنْ أَحَبَّهُمْ فَبِحُبِّهِ, whoever loves them is because of my what abghazahum fabighdhi. Like those are the, like we repeat those verses every Jumu'ah to make it stronger. That belief of ours. That whoever loves them loves Prophet ﷺ. Whoever hates them hates Prophet ﷺ. Look, their love is part of our faith, the Sahaba. So can you imagine someone who has hate? And there are people, may Allah SWT help them, may Allah SWT protect them. It's out of their ignorance. They don't realize. Sometimes, you know, because when we praise Sahaba, they're wondering, like, why are they praising Sahaba? We put everything into its place. Like, alhamdulillah, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we put everybody in their place. We put prophets in their place. We put Sahaba in their place. We're not letting anybody go outside their boundaries, but they have these virtues. Some people get enraged. So it's complete jahala. So Quran is, every Jews talks about the Sahaba, praise of Sahaba. And here it is. So they're inseparable from the Prophet ﷺ. We can't have the Quran without the Sahaba. And so Imam Malik would say that only the kuffar, like it says, kuffar get angry at them. So if you're a person who gets angry at Sahaba, then it's calling you kuffar. So Allahumma hafazna min. Then the last part is for all believers. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, that Allah SWT promises those who believe and do righteous deeds from them مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. If you do have faith and keep doing your righteous deeds, Allah SWT will forgive you and He'll give you great reward. Because you do tawbah and your major thing, because of your iman, a'mal as-salih, the small deeds will already. Every time we do iman and amal as-salih, your small deeds are already shedding off by your salah, by your turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the big ones, they require your tawbah. And if you do it for a person of iman and amal as-salih, of course, Allah will grant you tawfiq. It will be part of your thing that you do tawbah, and Allah will give you great reward. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله.